Am I the a-hole for insisting on bringing my kids to no kids events? Story. I'm the only one in my family with kids, 2 young ones, ages 4 and 6. My siblings don't have children and my parents are retired. Recently, my sister moved into a new house and decided she's hosting family gatherings with a new rule: no kids allowed. She claims her house isn't kid-proof and wants more relaxed events. She framed it like she's doing everyone a favor, but let's be honest, it's just my kids, so this rule is clearly aimed at me. It's hurtful because these are family dinners and holiday get-togethers we've always celebrated together as a family. Now suddenly, my kids aren't welcome. What bothers me most is how this will affect my children. My 6-year-old adores his extended family, and if he finds out he's being excluded, it would break his heart. I'm worried he'll never get over it. How do I explain to him that he's not wanted at these family events? It could create a rift between him and the rest of the family. He's sensitive, and I don't want him growing up thinking he's not important. When she told me about her no kids rule, I said I wouldn't attend if my kids weren't invited. She accused me of overreacting, but if this becomes the norm, what happens for holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas? Am I supposed to leave my kids at home every time? The rest of my family is siding with her, telling me to just go along with it and leave the kids at home for a few hours. My parents, who don't have grandkids from my siblings yet, think it's no big deal. They're even pressuring me to cut my sister some slack since she had a tough time buying her house. But where's the consideration for me and my kids? Whoa. To top it off, my other sibling, who's child-free, said, "Maybe this is good for you. You could probably use a break." Great advice from someone who's never had to juggle parenting while trying to stay connected to family. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend her gatherings and calling her out? I feel like I'm being forced to choose between being part of my family or being a parent. Response. 1. Actually, I'm going with no a-holes here, but listen to my reasoning. When no one of your extended family is even mildly against this, then there's a message here. Whatever you're usually doing with your kids at family gatherings isn't working for the others. Yes, kids are kids. Kids can be a little much. They're just happy to see everyone. Parenting is hard, etc., whatever, we've heard it all. Nobody likes their parenting criticized, but that doesn't mean every criticism is unfounded. If you can be honest on yourself on that, you might be able to have an open conversation with your relatives about it and reach a different solution which doesn't exclude the kids in principle. You're NTA for not leaving your kids alone on major holidays. But if it's like I feel it is, the others are NTA either. Reply 1. I agree. I was thinking the same thing. It's a little odd that everyone, including the kids' own grandparents, agree with this rule. That tells me it's not just the sister who wants a break from these kids. Time for OP to take a hard look at her kids' behavior and her own parenting and ask herself why no one wants her kids around, even their own family. Reply 2. I also find it a little odd that this sister has the ability to declare she is the one hosting all holiday gatherings moving forward. Just OPE doesn't portray this situation as the occasional event that is at sister's house, which would be very appropriate, maybe not for holiday gatherings, but as her children no longer being welcome anytime the family gets together. She is either exaggerating how many family events will be at the sister's place or downplaying her children's behavior. I'm going to label this as "you're the a-hole" unless OP can provide more context. Reply 3. Yeah, something doesn't track here. I can't imagine the whole family being okay with the kids never attending any family events. Reply 4. It sounds like the sister wants to host child-free family gatherings. That doesn't mean she'll be hosting every family dinner and holiday. That's OP's "what's next?" It's really not that unreasonable to occasionally want to have dinner with your parents and siblings without the kids being there, especially since nobody has kids except OP. It would be ridiculous, however, to expect OP to leave her kids at home when the family is celebrating Christmas and Thanksgiving. Reply 5. She accused me of overreacting, but if this becomes the norm, what happens for holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas? She goes on like it's all family get-togethers, and then there's this line. Definitely sounds like she's exaggerating the whole situation. Response 2. NTA based on your point of view. But, as someone who doesn't have kids, I'll tell you that saying, "my house isn't child-proof," is code for, "I don't feel like you control your children." Maybe talk to mom and see if there's an issue you're not noticing with your kids' behavior away from home, reply 1. Ooh, that's a very good point, actually. I was just thinking, WTF, my house isn't childproof, but I let my mates bring their kids round and my niece and nephew do fine. But if the whole family is siding with the sister, maybe the parents just aren't being as attentive as my friends or my brother-in-law are. Reply 2. I'm kind of thinking that's the issue. Growing up, my parents had a different set of rules at home than when we went to visit someone's home. That's not a common practice anymore. Sister could also be one of those radical anti-child people, though. It would take a lot for me to say my nieces and nephews weren't welcome. Reply 3. If the other family members had sided with OP, I think the anti-child theory would be more plausible. But since they are all, grandparents included, seemingly on the side of the sister, I feel like there has to be more to the story, although I suppose it is possible for OP to have a family full of radical anti-kid types. Reply 4. Yep, my house is very much not kid-proof, but my relatives bring their kids. It's fine. The kids sit on the floor, play with toys, watch TV, are very well supervised. I only start making noise about the house not being kid-proof when I have kids flinging my decor around, terrorizing my cats, standing on my furniture, etc. Those kids aren't allowed over again. Sorry, I'm childless, so my house isn't kid-proof. Reply 5. Or sometimes it's an active hazard for children. The number of power tools I have laying around makes my place pretty non-kid friendly. But friends with kids are still invited with a very explicit, keep an eye on them at all times because my house is an active construction zone warning. Response 3. Info. Is your sister the only person hosting family events? What about the rest of your family, including you? Do the rest of you host, and if so, are those events child-free? I don't see an issue if your sister hosts an occasional child-free dinner or event at her house and for your kids to be watched by another relative or babysitter. They're not going to feel left out because mom and dad occasionally go out by themselves, and it would be good for you to have some adult-only time. I do think family holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas should include the kids, so either your sister is able to make exceptions for those holidays, or they can be hosted at someone else's house who doesn't have a child-free rule. Reply 1. Exactly. There are times it is fine for the adults to have their time, and then times where all the family should be welcome. You don't have the holidays and every single family dinner be child-free. OP should feel comfortable going occasionally to these without the kids, and then others opting to stay home instead. OP could also offer to host events where it's important the kids are included, and the siblings unwilling to allow the kids, major holidays and birthdays. I do find it interesting that the whole family is fine with the sister excluding the kids from all events hosted at her home. I'm wondering if the kids may be unruly. Reply 2, yeah, I agree the fact that her sister is saying she wants the events to be more relaxed, and everybody in her family agrees, does make me wonder what the family events with her kids are like. Reply 3, yes, usually when there's a family dispute, people end up falling into two camps and arguing. It's kind of telling that everybody is fine with sister's events all being child-free. This is especially telling. My parents, who don't have grandkids from my siblings yet, think it's no big deal. Most grandparents I've known are 100% all about their grandkids and would be up in arms about an event that excludes them. And then there's the fact that O.P, quote, S sister wants more relaxed events. I'd be willing to bet that O.P, quote, S kids are bratty little hellions, OP has no personality outside of mommy, and that she insists the whole world needs to revolve around her kids. Reply 4, I really think you've nailed it on her making mommy her whole personality since she took a huge offense to the child-free sibling suggesting a break for an evening. Reply 5, also BBQs, daytime events, etc. should include kids. If they aren't invited, then OP's immediate family doesn't go. If it's an evening, after 8 event, then you should get a babysitter and go once in a while. Be proactive, offer to host Christmas. If your kids aren't invited to a major holiday, then make plans with your husband's family or make plans to go away over Thanksgiving so it's a fun event. After the grandparents miss their grandkids at a major holiday, the rules will change pronto. Response 4. Info. Alright, we need to dig a little deeper here. The fact that your entire family is backing your sister's no kids rule has me wondering, are your kids a handful? Are we talking Bart Simpson level pranks, Eric Cartman level sass, or something else entirely? Do you have a close friend who can be blunt with you about this? Someone who can give you the real unfiltered truth? Because if your kids are the rowdy ones, or heaven forbid, the smelly ones, that could explain why your sister felt the need to implement a no kids policy and why everyone else is okay with it. Look, it's one thing for kids to be a little hyper or restless at a family gathering, but if your sister went so far as to make a house rule, there might be more to this story. It's possible she didn't want to hurt your feelings by saying it outright, so she went with a blanket ban. Before jumping to conclusions, maybe have an honest chat to see if there's something your family hasn't told you. That way, you're not left in the dark and your kids aren't being excluded for reasons that could be addressed. Reply 1. With a line like, "If he finds out he's being excluded, it would break his heart. I'm worried he'll never get over it. How do I explain to him that he's not wanted at these family events?" I think a .p quote as attachment to her kids are the problem. It is not uncommon to leave the kids with a babysitter and say parents are going out for the evening, and nothing more. What is uncommon is overthinking requests for a kid-free time. I think the sibling saying maybe this is good for you, you could probably use a break, is trying to be a little blunt with OP reply 2. The idea of wanting to explain to a 6-year-old that he's not wanted at family events really sounds like she's trying to get him on her side in this argument. Like she wants to tell him, "I'm sorry, but Aunt said she doesn't want you there." Isn't that so mean? I'm sorry that she's so mean. Like she wants a buddy in this fight against her sister. This is the kind of stuff my narcissistic father pulled, trying to get me as a child on his side in a fight with other adults. It is extremely unhealthy. Honestly, the child should not be privy to any talk that indicates being unwanted in any capacity. Reply 3. That absolutely raised red flags for me. I would never, ever tell me kids they're being excluded. I'd just tell them that some events are just for grown-ups. Easy peasy. Reply 4. I think she is a yes mom. The kind of mom whose kids are the prince and princess who can do no wrong and she overlooks behavior because she doesn't want to hurt their feelings. The kind of mom who gets angry when someone else tells her kids no or to knock off a behavior. Kids raised like that are rarely welcomed or enjoyed by anyone other than mom or dad. Reply 5. Right? Something smells fishy. A. He's 6. How can he possibly care that much? And B. For him to know, she'd have to actively tell him. Has this kid never had a sitter? Does she share every detail of where she's going and what she's doing with this kid? Response 5. Why TA? Because you're jumping to conclusions. Nowhere did your sister say she would try to exclude your kids from holidays. My 6-year-old adores his extended family, and if he finds out he's being excluded, it would break his heart. I'm worried he'll never get over it. If this is any indication of how you interact with your sister, I completely understand why she wants a break from the kids, always being around. I promise you, your child will not be traumatized by your sister occasionally hosting adults-only events. Everyone's world does not revolve around your kids. It is perfectly understandable for your sister to occasionally want to host adults-only events, especially in her own home. What happens for holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas? Am I supposed to leave my kids at home every time? You're jumping so far to conclusions. There's a huge difference between your sister hosting an adults-only dinner in her own home versus her excluding your kids from the family Christmas. Nowhere did you say your sister indicated she would try to do that, so you're a huge AH for trying to use whataboutisms to get your way and pressuring your sister into changing her house rules. Reply 1. This. I have kids, and sometimes I like to hang out with my family sans kids. My kids aren't hurt when mom and auntie have a date of themselves, or dad and uncles and grandpa all go out for an activity. My kids know they're not the center of the universe, and everything doesn't revolve around them. Reply 2. I imagine it's also because of how you phrase it to your kids laugh out loud. Telling any child that they're unwanted by their family is downright cruel and reeks of manipulation. I can't imagine a single world in which that would be an appropriate or helpful thing to tell a child. Reply 3. I remember being that age and just begging my mom to leave us girlies alone in the house so we could feel like grown-ups while she ran errands or visited her parents. OP can hire a babysitter and leave for a few hours, and they can dip out of the party or event a bit early to get home to the kids. The way OP worded everything, I'm beginning to suspect they are just an overly emotional, self-centered, bitter person, because they don't seem to recognize that everyone doesn't really want their kids around all the time. and it makes me wonder if they are one of those parents that just chuckles and shrugs it off when their kids destroy a home they're visiting. Also, I love how they are wondering how to tell their child they aren't wanted. Dude, just tell the kid, hey sweetie, sometimes adults have to go to events that are just for grown-ups. This time, we can't take you. That's it. This reads like a pity party. And the jumping to conclusions of we'll never have the kids for holidays, etc. No one said that. But if your kids are little demonic brats, work on their guest manners before then. Response 6. Info, your sister is hosting kid-free gatherings. Is there any evidence beyond that any of these fears will happen? Is there any evidence that people are planning to have holidays like Christmas be kid-free? Is there any evidence that gatherings run by other people will be kid-free? That your sister wants gatherings not in her home to be kid-free? That this is the only way for your kids to spend time with their family? That's a lot of leaping to conclusions. Reply 1. I'm glad someone else thought there was something conclusion jumping too. Sister has hosted some gatherings and made them child-free. There's no mention of scheduled holiday gatherings. A child-free random night get-together at your sister's house is very different from a child-free holiday. I think the OP is getting way ahead of things. And if this is a real concern, the logical thing to do is start asking about family holiday plans now. If there is a plan to exclude your kids from a family holiday, then there's reason to be upset. Right now, I'm seeing a soft, gentle, you're the a-hole. Reply 2. Yeah, it sounds like OP is worried about worst-case scenarios, like kids not be invited to Christmas, but it sounds like sister so far is just hosting random dinners or something. I also wonder how often OP offers to host. Hosting is a lot of work, as it is, without having to child-proof a normally child-free home. Reply 3. I think it felt like a rejection, even though it likely wasn't. And the feeling was strongly, and then OP started jumping to conclusions to justify that feeling. Which is a very normal human thing to do, but does make her TA. Reply 4. I may be leaping to conclusions as well, but the fact that that is where OP's mind went first tells me that she thinks people don't want her kids at these family gatherings, which makes me think that her kids are badly behaved, and she knows it. Response 7. Info. We need to know exactly what she said and how she phrased it. Did she say holidays, such as Christmas, will be kid-free if held at her house? And of course, you wouldn't tell your 6-year-old anything of the sort. You'd need to cover it up with a little lie while he is this young, and make arrangements for him to see your parents at other times. The fact that your parents, the grandparents, are on board with no kids makes me think there are missing reasons here. Reply 1. Honestly, the entire family must be absolutely freaking sick of OP's kids at this point if everyone is on board with this rule. It doesn't sound like this one of those families where everyone hates each other and barely tolerates each other, so when even the grandparents have had enough, you know it must be bad. My guess is OP has 2 kids that run wild, and OP mentally checks out of parenting them as soon as there's another biologically related adult in proximity. Possibly intervened every now and again to tell people off if they call out her kids on the general running wild. And OP will be along shortly to insist her children are the calmest and most well-behaved kids ever in the world, and they've never been naughty in their lives, and the rest of the family is just unreasonable. Reply 2. There is something about how OP writes how they don't want their kids to feel they're not important. That rubs me the wrong way. It makes me feel like parents treat their children like golden calves, blindly worshiping them and refusing to see their flaws no matter how apparent, which unfortunately OP would never see it this way. To OP, their kids could never be hellions, they're just normal-spirited kids, and how could their family not see that and love them for it? There is no possible way OP is self-aware enough or honest with themselves to admit this. They clearly have blinders on and refuse to see the world any other way. I have family that is like this, exact same scenario you described. Their kid is not listening to their parents, who are so used to and tired of this behavior they don't even see it anymore, because it's not the worst their kids can be, so they have this skewed scale of acceptable behavior, and you cannot parent your siblings' kids. The only people who might be able to get away with it are the grandparents who seem to be completely over this behavior themselves, or tired of getting pushback from OP about not parenting their kids. Reply 3. Seriously, the grandparents being on board is the biggest tell for me, especially considering OP's kids are their only grandchildren. If even they want to avoid the situation, it speaks volumes. Reply 4. One of my cousins does this with her kids. As soon as there are other adults around, aita. She just checks out and does not pay a lick of attention to what her kids do. Fortunately, my family does have plenty of adults-only gatherings, so we don't have to deal with it all the time. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if one of her siblings, or even parents, instituted a no-kids rule simply because they got sick of it. As a cousin who lives far away, I only see them a few times a year. Reply 5. Yeah, the whole, what do I tell my 6-years-old, is wild. That says a lot about O.P. S parenting, and why the entire family may need a break from the kids. Unless we're talking holidays/birthdays, get a sitter for F's sake. Response 8. Aita only because this isn't a holiday. Your kids are the center of your world, but they aren't the center of everyone else's world. Your sister is entitled to host a kid-free gathering. If she and your family endorse excluding your kids for holiday gatherings, they are a-holes, but not for having a gathering on a random night that excludes your kids. Edit to add, the only way your child would know he is excluded is if you tell him. So you would tell him and create hurt feelings towards your family? He is important, but so is your family and their feelings. Raising your kid to believe everything is about him and his feelings won't do him any favors. Weaponizing your children in order to manipulate your family into doing what you want makes you a huge a-hole. Reply 1. That last paragraph is chef's kiss. I see so many parents centering their entire universe around their children and leading the kids to believe that everyone else will do the same. It's damaging to the kids. I'm a parent, love my kids, would die for them, but damn, I'm other things in this world besides their mom. I make sure they see that. The world does not revolve around them. Reply 2. So true. Also, it's not a bad thing for sister to want adult-only interaction with OP. I'm the child-free auntie to my friend's kids, but I'm not their friend. I'm their mom's friend, if that makes sense. My primary relationship is with the parent. Response 9. YTA. The world does not revolve around you, and not all events are made for children. This is not forever, it's just for this once. If you want family-friendly event, then plan them yourself. Also, why the hell would you say to your kid he is not wanted in family events? Just don't go and don't even tell him. Or simply tell him this was an adult-only event. You don't need to make a fuss about it. It's your job to protect him, not try to traumatize him so you can parade his trauma in front of everyone to try to make them feel guilty. Edit. Also, the fact that no one wants to see your kids and that they are all happy about this adult-only event might tell you something. They don't want to have small children running around and making noise and mess. Do you tend to supervise your kids during family event, or do they become everyone else's problem? Reply 1. Exactly, why would you even tell the kid? It's like she wants to traumatize him so she can parade him around and say, look how sad you evil PL are, you made my baby sad, waha! Her kids are probably entitled nightmares, just like mom laugh out loud. Response 10. YTA, the fact the whole family is siding with your sister, even the grandparents, to me screams that your children are poorly behaved. I understand why you won't attend if you can bring your children, but I think you need to figure out why the kids can't come. I'd have an honest convo with my mom about this. Reply 1, I feel like 4 and 6 are old enough that one shouldn't need to kid-proof a house at which you are a guest. Kids that age should be able to control themselves. They're not toddlers. Reply 2, yeah, not kid-proof is shorthand for your kids will wreck my crap. I would bet a large sum of money that OP has ill-behaved, uncontrollable children. My mom and my brother-in-law's mom would fuse and lose their minds together if we tried to exclude the grandbabies from anything. Grandparents wanting a child-free atmosphere as well is very, very telling. Response 11. This sounds to me like a potential issue with how the kids are behaving. There might be a disconnect in expectations for the kids' behavior versus what is actually happening. Especially if no one else seems to have an issue with this, it sounds like the underlying message is that they would like a break from the kids. Maybe ask your mom about this and see if that is the real issue, and then figure out if it's a perception or reality. This is not an easy conversation, which could be why your family is trying to dodge the issue altogether, but it's not fair to anyone to avoid it. If you need to parent them differently because there's an issue, you need to know that. If your family is too sensitive to what kids do normally, they need to know that. If it's a combination, everyone needs to communicate and figure it out. Response 12. Be honest, please. Are you I know they broke it, but kids will be kids. I'm not paying for that kind of mom? Response 13. YTA for not giving enough content. Are these get-togethers holiday events? Then definitely refuse to go. If they are just hanging out and having a few drinks with adult company, you could be an AH. Just because it's a social event doesn't mean you have to bring your kids. Parents need breaks too. And people that don't have kids for whatever reason don't necessarily want to be around them. I have 3 kids, grown now, and I can't tell you how nice it was on the few occasions my husband and I actually got to spend time with just adults was. There is no worries of my kids accidentally breaking something, eating something they didn't like and puking, having to generally chase after them, or just being able to let out a good old F word. Reply 1. I think most people with kids probably enjoy the kids-free events as much as the child-free people, if not more. Unless they have an unhealthy attachment to their kids, like it sounds like OP might have. Response 14. YTA. You're perfectly entitled to RSVP no for any social occasion regardless of reason. Saying no doesn't make you the AH. Making a big thing of it and calling her out does make you the AH. She didn't invite you to Christmas and say leave the kids behind. She invited you a house party at her new house and said leave the kids behind. That's perfectly reasonable. Again, you can politely say no to said invite. At this point, you're making assumptions and jumping to conclusions about the future. Your sister is not the only person controlling everyone's social calendar, right? Like your parents could host, your other sibling could host, you could host, right? She doesn't have a monopoly of family gatherings. Plan your own kid-friendly event on a different day as hers and say, hey, who'd love to join us? Response 15. Info. Is she going to be the only person hosting events from now on? Do you ever host events at your home? Response 16. YTA. She doesn't owe you consideration to let your kids run amok in her new house. Offer to host the holidays you want your kids included in. Response 17. There are so many family members who seem to want events at your sister to be child-free, even grandparents, that I wonder if your children are very disruptive and not well monitored by you. I do not know if this is the case at all, but it seems strange for this many family members to be on the same page about this issue. Response 18. NA since this sounds like a non-holiday invite. You have every right to say no, but if you're not hosting, you don't get to determine who is invited. I don't think there is anything wrong with your sister wanting to throw a dinner party for adults on occasion. The vibe is different. Response 19. YTA. Your kids are not the center of the universe. She has a new house. Why is it not unreasonable that she hasn't kid-proofed it and doesn't want your kids making a mess, breaking things, running around screaming, because no matter what you think, your kids are not well-behaved angels and you will not parent them to stop this behavior. No parent ever does. And the fact the rest of your family is on her side maybe should be a hint to you. Response 20. Info. Are you a family that spends a lot of time in each other's houses, family dinner together every Sunday, and lots of drop-ins through the week, in addition to celebrating every single possible holiday? I grew up in one like this. I know they exist. In that case, having one person's house child-free is okay, as long as they aren't the main host, and you aren't having the major holidays there. When I was growing up, we had the parties at certain people's houses and not others, and that was fine because that was how it was. When I reached school age and knew how to treat nice things and not be a wild animal, I could go to some of the gatherings the women of the family held and feel terribly grown up as well, so that going to a party at Auntie's becomes a grown-up thing that you have to look forward to and work toward earning the right to go. This is actually a good thing, as long as it's something that only happens occasionally and isn't cutting the kids out of seeing that side of the family entirely. Note that I talked about learning how to treat nice things like furniture and carpets and not act like a wild animal. Teaching your kids that is on you. And if you haven't been, it's time to start. 4 and 6 can easily understand that certain sorts of play don't happen in certain areas of the house. You don't wander around with fruit punch in a cup, but drink it sitting at the table, and you don't color on the walls. If they don't know this sort of basic civilization at 4 years old, then you've not been doing your job as a parent.